Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are going to see what if Naruto banished and got harem with Femme Kyuubi. Part 1. Hope you will enjoy this video, so before we start please subscribe to our channel and hit bell notification. Naruto had just had the battle of his life not too long ago. A battle with his so-called best friend, Sasuke Uchiha. The two had went at it with so much will and determination to win in the Valley of the End that it was a miracle neither killed each other somehow. Even Kakashi was surprised by this when he arrived too late. He couldn't find Sasuke, but he did find an unconscious Naruto laying there, bleeding from an open wound to the chest. Kakashi couldn't understand at first. Why would Sasuke use that jutsu to try and kill Naruto? Despite everything those two had been through, the ups and downs and even the arguments, Kakashi thought beyond a shadow of a doubt that the two were brothers in arms no matter what. Naruto's bleeding body being carried by the copy ninja told him otherwise. Kakashi was sent out there to also retrieve Sasuke, but arrived too late to do so. If he knew anything for sure, he knew that somehow, the council would find some way of punishing Naruto for all of this. As the silver-haired man finally reached the gates of Konoha, he quickly hurried to the hospital to get Naruto treated. Not to his surprise, most of the retrieval team had been sent to the hospital as well. Shikamaru was waiting on a chair outside the emergency room when Kakashi came in. When he saw the trail of blood, his heart sank at the thought of how he nearly got his entire team killed. Kakashi brought Naruto to the emergency room and then quickly headed out to inform Tsunade. He dreaded what she would think of all of this. The mission failed, Sasuke is a traitor, and the team aside from Shikamaru nearly killed. She was gonna have a field day with this. As Kakashi was headed to see Lady Hokage, Naruto was being operated on. In his own mind, he played everything out over and over again. Sasuke had tried to kill him more than once, and even came extremely close a few times. If the open wound, nearly a fist-sized hole in his chest gave off any indication of Sasuke's motivation. Naruto couldn't believe how far his teammate had fallen in the quest for power and revenge. It was sickening to the blonde at how much Sasuke was praised only for him to shove it back in everyone's face. How could he do this to a village that's bent over backwards for him? He just threw it all away for some revenge plan. In Naruto's opinion, that was a very foolish mindset, throwing away everything for revenge. Hey, Kit. That deep voice rang through his ears again like before. It sounded a little less sinister this time though. Almost calming really. Open your eyes, Kit. Naruto did as he was told and slowly opened his eyes with some strain. When he fully opened them and focused, he saw that he was in some kind of sewer of some kind with a large gate in front of him. Though, it wasn't the surroundings or the gate that made the blonde go wide-eyed. No, it was what was inside that gate. A large, red fox. The nine-tailed fox. Naruto immediately leapt to his feet only to realize that the floor was mainly water. He looked at the fox with fear plastered on his face, yet that stopped when he noticed the look in the fox's eyes. It wasn't the look of a demon who craves destruction and death, but just a being who looked concerned for someone. You can relax, Kit. The fox started in a regular-like tone. You know something, Kit, if I hadn't have jumped in then and there, you would have died. You know that, right? Naruto relaxed when he heard the fox's words. It was true. If it hadn't stepped in, then he would be dead from that Chidori through his chest. So, Naruto started with a look of confusion. Why did you save me then? The fox still had a saddened look to its face as it thought of the answer to that question for a bit. True, if Naruto died then it would die, but for the fox there was more to it than that. A somewhat deeper connection of sorts that it's never felt with any of its other vessels before. A sorrow that could be felt with the both of them while also a small ray of hope as well. It connected the two together in a way that even it didn't understand. With a sigh, the fox lowered its head and averted its gaze away from Naruto. The blonde didn't know why, but he could feel the sorrow coming from the fox spirit. Well, whatever the reason. Naruto started, causing the fox to wince, thinking that its jailer would do what the others would do. Thank you. The nine-tailed fox opened its eyes quickly and turned to Naruto, surprised that the boy thanked it. Before it could say anything, Naruto felt himself waking from wherever he was. He faded away from the fox and left it to ponder just what kind of vessel Naruto was, and how different he was from the others. Hospital room, a week after the mission. Naruto felt himself stir from sleep and opened his eyes slowly. He was quickly met by sunlight that was coming into his room and groaned. He covered his eyes with his right hand and noticed very quickly of how heavily taped his arm was. The medical tape stretched all the way from his palm and wrist to his elbow. He sat up from his bed and winced slightly at his still banged-up body. Upon further inspection of his body, Naruto could tell that most of his body was bandaged up from the Chidori and the scratches and cuts from his battle with Sasuke. Naruto really had to thank the fox for its healing abilities. If it weren't for that, then Naruto probably wouldn't have made it even halfway to Konoha. Aside from those wounds and the bandages from using a very powerful and dangerous Rasengan, Naruto was actually alright. He looked around for any sign of a doctor or any of his friends in the room. To his surprise, there was no one there to watch him. This reminded him a bit of his childhood whenever he was sent to the hospital by an Anbu. Whenever he would wake up, there was no one there to check on him or ask if he was okay in any way. Now was feeling vaguely like before. Naruto decided to get up off the bed and move around a bit to loosen his stiff muscles. Who knows just how long he was out. He moved his arms and legs a bit to get some feeling back into them before heading to the window to see the village. It was another bright and sunny day in Konoha. People were going about their daily lives as if nothing bad has happened. Naruto was at least happy to see that people weren't going off about their precious Sasuke being a traitor. Though, with Naruto's knowledge of how the villagers tend to act, the blame was probably gonna be put on him somehow. As Naruto leaned down on the windowsill, he failed to hear the door open and a masked Anbu to enter. The Anbu was a woman in a Neko mask and purple hair that was tied up at the moment. She saw that Naruto was up now and visible tensed up. She knew what her job was to do and dreaded every bit of it. Taking a deep breath, the Anbu spoke. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto turned to see her standing in the doorway and jumped a bit from her sudden appearance in his room. As soon as you are able, your presence is needed in the council meeting. Before Naruto could even say an, okay, the Anbu was gone in a shunshin. That was a red flag right there. Naruto decided to shrug it off and get himself ready to be yelled at by this council yet again. He didn't hate the council, surprisingly enough, he just hated that they blamed him for many things in the village. A few of them have even taken part in a previously annual fox hunt years ago when Naruto was kicked out of the orphanage. Those were dark days that Naruto were glad that was long behind him. It took a while, but Naruto was finally able to get out of the hospital and get into some of his comfortable clothes. His jacket that he wore when he arrived was shredded now, so he just tied around his waist while wearing his normal clothes and headband around his neck to hide some bandages. As Naruto left the hospital and took in the fresh air, he couldn't help but think more than a few eyes were on him wasn't an uncommon thing to the blonde, but he hasn't felt like people were staring at him with hate for a while now. As he walked down to get to Hokage Tower, he felt as if he was a child again with the way he actually saw people looking at him. Deciding to shrug it off, Naruto just continued on to get this over with and get some ramen later on. He would have to talk to his friends and sensei later unless he ran into them at some point. I can't believe that demon brat let Sasuke leave. One person whispered to another as Naruto passed them. I know. If anything, I really wish the Uchiha could have killed that monster and rid us all of it. Another whispered. When I heard that he was still somehow alive and lost the Uchiha, I just wanted to smother the little demon for it. Another whisper. Well, he is hurt now. So why don't we just finish him off? Because then that old bitch of a Hokage would have us executed. Humph. Seeing that demon walking around, knowing that he's the reason that Sasuke is lost to us makes me so mad. The whispers were starting to get a little louder now for Naruto to hear clear as day. He should die. It's all his fault. The demon should just disappear. Something like him shouldn't exist in our village. Maybe we should do another fox hunt this year. Naruto's happy mood shifted to depressed when he heard the various comments he hadn't heard in nearly a year. He had long since thought that maybe the villagers were starting to look at him a ninja and started to respect him in the slightest, but with this one act, that was no more. Naruto didn't want to hear any more and just ran off to get this meeting over with and go home to rest. Council meeting. Tsunade had just been informed about Naruto's recovery and soon arrival to the meeting. She went wide-eyed and hated what she had no choice but to do now. If she knew Naruto, she knew that he would be torn up about what was about to happen to him. She looked around to the Shinobi Council and saw a mixture of anger and sadness. It was understandable since most of their children were good friends with the Jinchuriku in the first place. Seeing the look on the boy's face when he was told this will haunt them for a long number of days. She then looked to the civilian council and was appalled by the smirks and satisfied glares they had. It sickened Tsunade that these people were the main reason that Naruto's life was such hell when he was only a frightened child. If Tsunade had her way, many of those council members would suffer by her hands. Her angry thoughts were shattered though when Naruto walked through the door. She looked over to the boy and paled upon his entry. That was another red flag to Naruto. Tsunade never paled to anything unless it was horrible news. Naruto stood in front of the council and waited to hear just what they planned on doing about the failed Uchiha recovery mission. Genin Naruto Uzumaki. Tsunade started after a couple of minutes of waiting. Naruto didn't say anything and just looked at her with those bright blue eyes of his. I'm so sorry Naruto. She thought before continuing. Because of your failure in retrieving Sasuke Uchiha, and nearly getting your team killed, you are hereby. She hesitated for a few seconds before taking a deep breath and continuing again. Banished from Konohagakure. Naruto went absolutely wide-eyed as his jaw dropped to the floor. He couldn't form any words to describe how he felt towards this. Anger. Betrayal. Hatred. Sadness. Denial. He didn't know. All he knew was that Tsunade hated having to say those dreaded words and the Shinobi Council hated hearing them. He turned to the civilian council and saw their satisfied looks and disgusted glares as he processed this whole thing. You have until 10 a.m. tomorrow to pack your things and leave the village, or you will be met with force. Tsunade said as she looked away from his sad eyes. Those eyes he made would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life now. Naruto still couldn't say anything. He just couldn't. There were still no words to describe this feeling. This emptiness he had long thought was filled was now blank once again. Holding back tears, Naruto turned slowly as he walked back towards the door and left the room. Tsunade wanted to go and console him, but was stopped by one of the elders with the bandages around his face. She could only watch as Naruto's world came crashing down around him over the sake of one traitorous brat. As Naruto wailed with the same wide-eyed look back to his rat hole of a home, his mind still couldn't process all of this. What just happened? He thought to himself. First the villagers were back to talking down on him, now he was banished because he failed to bring back a traitor. He was loyal to this village for his entire life. He stayed here with the hope of one day becoming Hokage and earning everyone's respect. No matter how hard the beatings, the near deaths, the tortures he went through, or any other harsh treatment he had from these people, he was always loyal. Then one failed mission to bring back this village's precious, loyal, Uchiha and he was banished. That made no sense to him in the slightest. As he walked on with his stiff and still shocked expression, he could still hear the villagers bashing him. Of the various insults and hurtful remarks towards him, one word kept coming up. Demon. That word was said to him for as long as he remembered. That word carried too much volume in how much it hurt him. To be called a demon when he's done nothing to truly hurt anybody was the worst part of it all. As he finally made it to his home, he went up to room and closed the door. After he did that, he slumped to the floor and the tears he held in were let out along with a scream. Why? Why did this happen to me? He thought to himself as he continued to sob into his hands. Why? 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 Because of me. That deep voice was back and quickly got Naruto's attention as he noticed he was back in that sewer again. He looked up to the fox and saw that it had a saddened expression to its face. I'm so sorry, Naruto. If it wasn't for me, then this village wouldn't have treated you like this. Its voice was getting lighter and a little higher now. If only it was someone else. If only it didn't have to be you, then you could have lived a normal life. Its voice started sounding higher pitched, almost feminine like. It's all my fault and you're suffering for it. Before it knew she could continue, Naruto stopped her. You're a girl. She stopped when she realized her actual voice came out. With a sigh, she nodded to him. Yes, I am Naruto. I have been for my entire life. She looked down in shame almost. That's not important now. What is important is that I'm sorry for all the horrible things I've caused to happen to you because of me being sealed inside you. It's all my fault that they're kicking you out of your home. Naruto stopped his sobbing at the phrase, your home. He thought about it for a moment. You know, I used to look in the windows of other people's houses when I was younger. She looked back to him. I remember. I always looked at how the parents would treat their kids with love and compassion. He continued. I wanted something like that. I wanted to feel that warmth and love from others. I was a 5-year-old living on the street with people from this village looking down at and beating me for just existing. He took a few breaths before continuing. I thought at the time that everyone was like that in the world, but then the first time I ever truly left the village and went to Wave, I saw how wrong I was. Those people, Tazuna, Inari, his mother, they all treated me with kindness even before I helped save them from Gato. He looked back up to her and she was surprised by the look of determination back in his eyes. I think now I really get it. Get what, Naruto? He stood up and wiped away his tears before looking back up to her. That a place where everyone constantly hurts you is no home at all. The fox chuckled a bit before speaking to him again. So what are you going to do, Kit? Naruto smiled up at her and answered. I'm gonna leave this village forever, become stronger than anyone and carve out my own destiny far away from this hell. She smiled at him and stood on her haunches. Naruto got a full look at her as she stood there. Then to atone for the pain I've caused you all your life, I'll do whatever I can to help you, Naruto. He smiled up at her. Thanks. I still don't know what to call you though. She smiled again at her and leaned down. For now, call me Kyuubi. With that, Naruto smiled at Kyuubi before he was returned to his room. His resolve was strengthened and he stood up. Looking around his horrible room, Naruto deiced it was time. He grabbed a backpack and started to fill it with clothes and equipment for himself before glancing out the window. To his surprise, it was now night time and a full moon was out. He also spotted lanterns and heard people cheering about something. Upon closer inspection he could tell that word of his banishment must have got out and the villagers were celebrating. That was the last straw. That was when Naruto knew without a shadow of a doubt that this place was never his home. Now in disgust, Naruto decided to pull on last prank on this village for all the suffering and pain they put him through. It took some time and a lot of sneaking around, but Naruto was finally able to set up the explosive tags around his home and fireworks around the festival. Before he lit them, he had a few things he had to do. First was dropping off his headband that Iruka gave him. Since he was banished now, he wouldn't need it anymore. He dropped it off at the academy with a note next to it on Iruka's desk. Last thing he wanted was to confront his former sensei about this whole thing. Next was the necklace Tsunade gave him. His dream of becoming Hokage died now, so he might as well return this to her desk as well. To his surprise, she wasn't in her office nor was anyone else. So he left it along with a note as well. Last was seeing his friends one last time, but that was a mistake. He searched for them only to find that a few were actually at the festival. Sakura, Ino, Choji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Shino, Tenten, and even Neji and Lee were there. They seemed to be enjoying themselves there at the Fox Festival, unaware that said Fox Boy was watching them. That was it. There was no other reason to stay in this place anymore. Naruto gritted his teeth and activated both tags and the fireworks and watched as everyone panicked. It was satisfying to see the angered and confused faces of the people on last time. With that, Naruto left the area and went to the gate. He had no idea where he was going or what he was going to do, but one thing was for sure, he would never return to this village. He would keep his promise to become stronger than anyone, and with Kyuubi's help, he can live free and happy. With that thought in mind, Naruto left the village to make a name for himself and to carve his own destiny. It had been 3.5 years after Naruto left the village now and he had gotten considerably stronger than before. He had discovered that his elemental affinities were wind and water in that time thanks to Kyuubi, and had even learned to master them both. He was very proficient in both now and could even combine the two for more powerful ice techniques. And since he did have a tailed beast inside of him with its own chakra, Naruto was even able to learn the other elements. He started to like using fire, was slowly mastering earth and was getting the hang of using lightning. He was no master yet by any means in ninjutsu yet, but he was getting closer with each passing day. Genjutsu was something he was really trying to avoid since he wasn't good at it, but Kyuubi convinced him after stating that some of the best ninjas know at least how to cast and fight off genjutsu. She was a really convincing and sometimes demanding teacher to the blonde, yet she was a very good teacher. All those decades and maybe even centuries of experience paid off for Naruto as she taught him. He could now cast a few genjutsus if need be to fool others and surprisingly enough was pretty great at it. Taijutsu was his favorite part of training. That was when he got to see Kyuubi's human-like form and spar with her. She would take the form of a fairly tall, slender woman that was both curvy and muscular at the same time. Her skin was a smooth tan color while she had piercing red eyes, short crimson hair that was straight, had her fox ears sticking out, and her 9 tails just above her firm bottom. She would usually wear a kimono that was pretty loose for mobility. The kimono was a deep red color that had an orange fox pattern on the back of it. It was simple and gave her room to maneuver around in. The reason why Naruto liked this part of the training was because he got to see her true form and fight her multiple different styles. She knew many different styles and would spend at least a week training him with one style at a time. It was very helpful that they both knew the shadow clone technique when Naruto really wanted to know more styles. During Naruto's travels, he decided to head west. During those travels he found himself caught in an ongoing war between Kusagakure and Amegakure. It was there that he experienced his first kill. An AIM ninja who was attacking an innocent villager in Kusa. Naruto hesitated when taking him down with a kunai through the head. When he saved that little girl and saw many ninja on both sides witness it, he knew that he was now a part of this war. It was his time in Kusa where he learned kenjutsu from a ninja who was also a former samurai. With his help and Kyuubi's, Naruto was easily able to master kenjutsu and help Kusa win the war with AIM in a mere year. He wields a blade that he found during a raid in Amegakure. The blade is a blood-red katana with a black handle and guard. That wasn't the strange thing about it was the fact that in the handle was an eye. Not just a normal eye, but a blood-red, demonic eye. Kyuubi informed him that this sword was indeed one of the rarest blades in the world, a demon blade. Because of her own demonic chakra, Naruto was able to wield it with no problem. He named it Akai Akuma. After he helped ended the war and was a hero to the people of Kusa, he left to continue his journey for true strength. Not wanting everyone to know that it was Naruto Uzumaki that helped ended the war and became so powerful in such a short time, Naruto insisted that he be referred to by a different name. And thus he became the White Fox. The name was mainly because of the choice mask he wore when in AIM, a white fox mask with piercing, dead white eyes. The bingo book marked him down as an A-ranked ninja. That was a while ago and now Naruto was moving through a forest area. He was wearing a dark orange long-sleeved shirt with a white undershirt, and black cargo pants along with black ninja sandals. He had enjoyed taking these long walks in the forest, and since he really didn't have a place to stay, he made camp out here. He set up his tent and cooked up some rabbits he caught a while ago before laying down and watching the night sky. It was a clear, starry night out tonight, and it was calm times like these that really made Naruto wonder just how different his life would have been if he had left the village a long time ago. He's 16 now and at least a very high Junin now, but he couldn't help but wonder just how his progress as a ninja would be if he were still in Konoha. He sighed before deciding to call it a night for now. As he slept, his mind drifted and he was having his recurrent nightmare again. The one about his days back in Konoha as a kid and how the people would mistreat him. Every beating, every bit of abuse, every break-in, every rape, every torture playing out in a perfect image in the teen's mind. Surprisingly enough though, Naruto had grown used to the nightmares now. Kyuubi would always talk to him to make him feel better and soothe his mind. She was very caring of him, a trait Naruto never would think that the most powerful and feared demon would be like. The next morning Naruto woke up when he heard some commotion not too far away from him. He decided to check it out after quickly getting dressed as he heard screams of a few girls. Leaving quickly, Naruto saw around 5 girls around his age and a child around 8 or 9 running away from several male bandits. The bandits had lust-filled eyes directed towards the 5 and Naruto could at least see why. The 5 girls were beautiful indeed, but now wasn't the time to gawk. The blonde donned his mask and leapt into action just as one of the bandits grabbed one of the girls. The girl was fairly tall with tanned skin and short orange hair. She wore a tattered brown shirt and black shorts and had no shoes on. Her green eyes showed fear as she desperately tried to break out of the monk's grip only for him to laugh and slap her, hard. Naruto didn't hesitate. He dropped down right next to the man and before either could react, Naruto had already removed his head from his shoulders. The girl was shocked by this but didn't question why this masked man was saving her. The other 4 girls and the child were surrounded by the rest of the bandits, about 9 of them. They were all visibly terrified with the little girl clinging desperately to one of the girls. Hey. Looks like our little hunt ends here fellas. One of the bandits says. So boss, we still gonna, he rubbed his crotch with his left hand toward the girls, have some fun before we take them back to town. A big burly bald man wearing a loose outfit walked over and stopped in front of the girls. He grinned until he noticed something. Wait a minute, wasn't there 6 of them? I only count 5. Another bandit smirks and answers. One of our guys caught her and is probably having fun with her right now. The other girls visibly paled at hearing their friend's fate. It was an awful thing that these bandits were doing, and all they could do was stay close to one another and pray that someone save them. Almost as if that prayer was answered, before any of the bandits could lay a finger on them, a body fell to the ground next to them. They all easily recognized the body of their comrade and gasped as they saw his head roll over to them. Who the hell dares to step up to us? The boss of the group yelled out to the forest, expecting someone to answer. The other men got ready for an attack and spread out a bit. 9 guys, all bandits, no skills at all. Naruto thought to himself as he stood near a bush, watching them all. He smirked behind his mask as the girl was behind him. This'll be too easy. What do you The girl was cut off when she saw the masked man vanish out of thin air. She gasped in shock before looking to the other girls and bandits. The bandits were starting to get a little nervous. It was a bright day out where literally anybody could be seen from both above and all around. Yet they couldn't find whoever it was that was here. Naruto liked this. He enjoyed being stealthy on bandits and low-level nin. The panic and the uneasiness they display always made him smile on the inside. He knew it was a little bit sadistic to play with your prey before ending it, but maybe that was Kyuubi's influence. Naruto decided to pick one off in a loud way to stir up some confusion. He silently went by trees until he was close to one of the bandits. He grabbed the man by the back of his neck and pulled, hard. The man let out a high-pitched scream and was pulled into the bushes. The other bandits heard this and saw that the bush now had blood all over it. The bandits were more than disturbed at seeing this but was still a little unfazed. Naruto decided to step it up a notch. He went up a tree and hid for a few seconds before catching 3 of them all with swords of their own. The blonde saw their very poor form and loose grips and shook his head. Deciding to let these men see a real swordsman before they die, Naruto dropped down in the center of them and landed in a crouching position. The three were shocked at first, but that changed when they saw this masked man reach for and unsheath his own blade on his back. The three yelled out as they rushed the man, but they were easily taken out in a flash. Naruto leapt into the air in the trees before the last five showed up. They saw their comrades cut down and started to panic. Naruto had to suppress a chuckle at the last five bandits. He decided that now was the best time to really mess with them. He dropped down in front of the five, causing them all to jump in both shock and then fear. The boss of the group looked at the masked man, or more specifically, his mask, and went wide-eyed. He slowly backed away as he realized just who this person was. Boss. One of the bandits said as he started to tremble at the gaze the masked man was giving them. What do we do? Their boss started to stutter. The WWW White FF Fox. Oh. Naruto started as he placed his blade on his shoulder and tilted his head slightly. So you've heard of me. Good. Then maybe you can tell me just what you worthless sacks of garbage were going to do to those girls. One of the bandits didn't know what to do and foolishly charged in out of panic. Naruto dodged his sword slash and swiftly cut the man in half from the waist. The last four and the girls saw this and their jaws dropped. I guess I wasn't clear enough. Naruto started as he wiped his blade on the mon's shirt. So I'll ask nicely one last time. What were you going to do to them? The boss decided that this job was not worth dying to the infamous Wit Fox. This was supposed to be a low-level job. Nobody, especially someone from the bingo book, was supposed to stop them. Look, we were just hired to grab the girls and take them back to their base, okay? Naruto tilted his head again and pointed his sword to them. This caused the four bandits to flinch. Whose base? Just some human traffickers and prostitution rings. The boss said quickly. We would just get a cut of the profits when we brought them back. Where? Just some village in the Earth country. That's all we know. So you'll let us go, right? The boss asked with a small smirk. He thought that if he gave the White Fox some information that what's left of his men would be allowed to live. Unfortunately for him, if this was the Naruto before the war in Kusa, then he might have been right. When did I ever say that? The White Fox asked them. They gasped in horror at this and tried to make a break for it. They didn't get far before they started to sink into the earth. Naruto walked over to their sinking forms and crouched down to them as they begged and pleaded with him. You guys were gonna rape and take advantage of them. I hate people who prey on the weak, but I absolutely loathe rapist. You all have this coming. And just like that, the men were gone and the forest was quiet once more. Naruto sighed out as he had what he needed. He was about to head back to his belongings and then go to Earth Country, but he was stopped by the girls. One was a long-haired blonde with dark eyes and light skin. Another was also a blonde but with short hair and yellow eyes along with her fair skin. The third had dark skin, black hair to her shoulders, and brown eyes. The fourth had blue hair only to the top of her head, fair skin and blue eyes like her hair. The last was the little girl. She had pure white hair and eyes and had pale skin. Naruto turned to them and saw that they were all standing there, staring at him in awe. So you're the White Fox. The blue-haired girl started in awe. You're just as amazing as the rumors in AIM made you out to be. Naruto smiled behind his mask and folded his arms to his chest. Thanks. Always nice to meet some fans. And who exactly are you all anyway? I'm Akane. The blue-haired girl spoke. My name's Hikari. The black-haired one answered. Hikaru. The orange-haired girl. I'm Toyoko, the long-haired blonde started then pointed to the other blonde hiding behind her. And this is Ayako. And this little girl right here is Setsu. Hikaru motioned to the little girl. Setsu looked up at Naruto with wonder and awe in her eyes. She was truly mesmerized by how he saved them and what he was about to do. Well, it's nice to meet you girls. Naruto started with a nod to them. I would stay, but I have a base to destroy and some others to hopefully help. Before Naruto even took 2 steps, he was already stopped. A hand on his shirt was what stopped him and he turned to see that it was actually Setsu that had him. Naruto looked down to her and saw that she now had a questioning look to her face. You have something inside you, don't you? She asked him. Naruto gasped under his mask as he looked into her eyes. I can sense it. Something dark and powerful inside you. She let him go and reached for the seal on his stomach. Just what exactly is it though, I wonder? Before she could make contact, Naruto grabbed her wrist to stop her. Listen Setsu, she looked up at him. I don't know how those eyes of yours works, but you should be careful when looking into a person. Setsu went a little wide-eyed when she could no longer look within this person. She looked into his eyes and nodded slowly. So why exactly is the infamous white fox wandering around in a forest? Hikari asked him as she folded her arms just below her impressive bust. I was just minding my own business when I heard all of this. It was good warm-up, but now I'm ready for an actual workout. Naruto turned around to leave before he was stopped again. We can show you where the village is. Hikaru said to him. Naruto turned back to them and tilted his head. We'll show you where, you just have to promise us that you'll leave the leader for all of us. Naruto didn't get that part but nodded anyway. With that, the group led Naruto through Earth Country to a small village that made Naruto growl a bit under his mask. In the village there were men all around with women doing very degrading things for their own amusement. The men would force them to dance in front of them with next to nothing on, force them into a pile of men for an obvious reason, and in some sicker cases beating them with whips. Which one is the leader? He asked the girls that could feel the intense ki seeping out of him. That man right there. Toyoko said as she pointed down to a nin of some kind. That would make this a lot easier for Naruto to determine who not to kill yet since the leader was the only ninja down there. Naruto stood up and cracked his neck before looking to the girls. Stay here, and don't move. I'll end this quickly. And before they could say anything, he was gone in a shunshin. They looked down and waited for a while to wonder just what the white fox had in store for the bandits. After a few minutes of waiting, they started to hear screaming as bandits started to be taken down by lightning strikes and fierce winds. They watched as the bandits tried and failed to run away from everything that was happening around them. They were left in a daze of disorientation and confusion as they were all being torn apart by something too fast for them to see. The girls in the village were terrified and some even sickened by what they were seeing. A blur was destroying the bandits that had held them captive for so long and was doing so in very bloody ways. They watched from inside some of the buildings and even a few of the shacks and cages they were kept in as the massacre continued. All they could see was a white blur of some kind. The only one not touched was the ninja that was trying to flee, only to be stopped with a kunai through his leg. He fell to the ground in pain as the sound of his men's screams slowly started to fade away into silence. He pulled out the kunai and tried to patch himself up, only to be stopped once again from doing anything by a voice. I really should just kill you now. The man looked up only to gasp in horror at who he was seeing. Standing right in front of him was the White Fox, a ninja who was said to have killed hundreds of AIM ninja in the War of Kusa and AIM. The same ninja was staring down at him with not a single scratch or speck of blood on his clothes. Now that Naruto was here in front of the ninja, he saw that he was in a sound uniform. This made his blood boil at seeing the same symbol that brought that traitorous Sasuke over to them and caused his banishment. Naruto had to take a few very deep breaths so he wouldn't just take out Akai Akuma and send this nin to hell. If it were up to me, I would kill you now and be done with it. Naruto started. But that's not for me to decide now, is it? With that, Naruto turned away from the sound nin and that was when Setsu and the others came towards him. The nin had no time to prepare for his death as he was too terrified to really do or say anything. Setsu stood in front of him and knelt closer to his face. The nin tried to swing at her with a kunai in hand, but was stopped by Naruto grabbing his arm and snapping it like a twig. Setsu, no longer distracted, gazed into the mont's eyes and her white eyes turned into a deep black color with white pupils. The nin started to convulse violently and his eyes rolled completely behind his head. In a matter of seconds, he started to foam at the mouth and then stopped moving at all. Naruto was amazed by whatever Setsu did as her eyes changed back to white. He would have to ask her about it later though as now a few eyes were steadily focused on him. Naruto looked around for a brief moment and noticed that every girl was staring at him in both awe and thanks. The ones in cages had been freed and the ones hurt were now being treated as best as they could. Naruto, thinking that his job here was done, decided to take his leave, but before he could, he was stopped by more than a few girls who wanted to thank him. He was just a bit uncomfortable at first, since he really had no clue how to really talk to girls like this, so he just decided to wing it and just be himself. Hours later, night time. It took some time, but with the few very healthy and the help of the White Fox's many clones, the dead bodies had been moved away to be burned up. Naruto rather enjoyed helping this village and its residents clean the place up of all the blood bodies. It was nice to get to know some of the girls that would casually speak to him like everything was normal. Some of the repeated questions were of course asked, like where was he from, did he really kill that many aim nin, and what was his real name. Naruto would answer the first two but would always hesitate when it came to the last one. He debated in his head for all those hours until Kyuubi decided to speak for the first time today. You should at least take the mask off, she said to him in a calm tone. You really think so, Kyuubi? Naruto asked her, still a little hesitant of it all. Look, they're heavily in your debt for saving them from a life that would only end in either death, or a lust-filled haze they would never escape. Kyuubi continued. They won't care who you really are. They would just love to see the face of the one who saved them all and not a mask and title. Naruto sighed as her words made sense to him. You're right, Kyuubi. Thanks. Kyuubi chuckled a bit before fading from his thoughts to rest again. When she did, Naruto let out a sigh and decided to take off his mask. Before he did, Hikaru found him. Hey there, White Fox. She started in a friendly tone. Look, I don't know if you'll be staying here for a little festival we're having a little later, but you know it would be nice if you at least stayed for it. Naruto put his finger to his masked chin in a thinking pose. Well, I was planning on just wandering around until I found something to do, so sure. I can stay for a bit. Hikaru smiled and nodded to him. Then it's good to have you here, White Fox. No, he said to her, confusing the girl for a bit. That was when he reached for his mask and removed it, revealing himself to her. Hikaru was stunned by how he looked. The spiky blonde hair, the sky blue eyes, and the whiskers adorning his face. He smiled at her, causing the orange-haired girl to blush. Call me Naruto. Several years later, a child was wandering around in town by himself. It didn't bother him in the slightest though. He walked along a street as his short blonde hair with red tips at the end flowed with the wind. His light red eyes with slitted blue pupils, fairly light skin, and two whisker marks on each side of his face an all too familiar sight to the people in the fairly small village. He wore a black shorts and a dark orange jacket that was open, revealing a white undershirt. The boy had a big toothed smile on his face as he approached a stand on the side of the street he was walking on. He was met by a teenage girl with pale skin and white eyes and hair that reached her mid-back. She turned to the boy and smiled at him as he sat on a stool in front of her stand. Hey there, Boruto-kun. The girl said to the boy now known as Boruto. How have you been? Boruto gave her a little chuckle before answering her. I've been doing just fine. Setsu Obakan. Just came over to get a new book for Akira. She blows through these things so easily. Hard to believe she's only 5 sometimes. Setsu chuckled under her breath as she went looking through her assortment of books. She had loaned Boruto a few of her books in the past for him to return within a week, but when it came to Akira, that girl would usually finish them within a day. It made her laugh but also ponder just how many of these books has that little girl read by now. Setsu decided to let it go for now and handed Boruto a book on the history of Sunagaku. Maybe that would keep her busy for more than one day. Boruto thanked one of his many aunts and left the book stand. He went past many of the familiar faces as he was leaving the village area and into the forest. Ever since he was born, he's always had an attraction to the forest where he and his family lived in. His mother may not be as enamored with the forest as both Boruto and Akira are, but she enjoyed watching the two play with their father all the time in the trees. Boruto had always felt at some kind of peace when it came to the treetops that led to and even surrounded his home. It was something that he really couldn't explain, but it just felt right to him. Nature, the animals, the peace it brought about, he just loved it. Same with Akira. As Boruto was moving through the branches to his usual route home, he heard the voice of someone right above him and knew exactly who it was. Oni-chan. A little girl shouted out as she landed on her brother's back to surprise him. The girl was about half his size with burnt red hair and bright blue eyes. Her skin was a lightly tanned color and she had one whisker mark on each side of her cheeks. She wore a bright red shirt that came all the way to her ankles, covering her plain shorts and had on plain sandals. Boruto easily caught his footing and held onto her with ease as he continued on. "Hey there Akira-chan," Boruto said to her as he continued on. He handed her the book as he was passing by more trees at a fairly decent pace. "Look what I got you from Setsu Obakan." Akira's face lit up as she saw a new book for her to read. She grabbed it and thanked her brother as he continued on home with her in tow. It took a few minutes, but they finally reached their home. It was a regular-sized house fit for a group of people. It was a white house with a red roof and plants around and below the windows. There was also a small garden on the side of the structure that had some pretty strange fruits and vegetables growing from them. Not too far away from the garden in the forest was a visible river of clear water. In the backyard, there was a clear field that ran for acres on end that sported a few craters courtesy of their mother and father's sparring sessions. Speaking of those two, both Naruto and the two's mother were sitting on a porch near the garden and looking out onto the calm waters. Naruto had changed a bit in these years of a calm life. He let his spiky blonde hair reach a little past the back of his neck and had a white streak on the right side of his head, had 3 seal contracts tattooed on parts of his body and weren't visible to the eye, was taller than before by a foot or so, and had a tattoo of a red fox on the left side of his neck that reached to his left shoulder. He wore a black, long-sleeved sweater and had on orange cargo pants. The mother was none other than the Kyuubi herself. After a year or so of training together after saving Hikaru and the others, Kyuubi had started to express her feelings toward the blonde. Much to her surprise, he accepted her and admitted to caring for her as well. After they admitted that to each other, Kyuubi asked Naruto to call her by her real name, Kurama. Naruto even removed most of the seal to allow her to fully retain her human form and live with him, physically. She didn't look too different from before aside from the tattoo of the yellow fox on the right side of her neck that stretched to her right shoulder. Her crimson hair was longer, and she kept her tails away unless in battle. She wore a plain red dress that went to her ankles and didn't have any shoes on. She was actually laying on Naruto's shoulder and sleeping peacefully. Naruto saw that their children had just returned and shushed them so they wouldn't wake their mother. The two noticed this and quietly went over to them. "Tusen," Boruto whispered. "We're back, and I got Akira a new book." Naruto smiled at the two as Akira held up the book with much enthusiasm. He gave them a quick thumbs up before motioning them to head inside to get ready for dinner. They nodded and went inside, leaving him with his still asleep wife. With a gentle nudge of his shoulder, he woke her up. "Hey, it's time for dinner," he said softly to her in a slightly deeper voice. Kurama didn't open her eyes and just yawned on his shoulder. "You smell nice," she said in a tired voice. Naruto smirked at the compliment and rubbed her hair and ears. "So I've been told," he teased her as he planted his lips on her forehead. "Ready to eat." She took her head off his shoulder and opened her red eyes to him. "Carry me," she told him in a still tired form. Naruto chuckled a bit under his breath and proceeded to lift her up bridal style. He carried her inside and the family of 4 proceeded to have dinner. Konoha. Things haven't been so well in the Hidden Leaf village for some time now. After Naruto was banished, some of their alliances were torn. Mainly the Wave, Suna, and even some other villages that agreed to an alliance with Konoha because of a certain blonde. They still had allies, but Suna was their main bulk and without them, they were a tad bit vulnerable. Throw in the fact that they banished their own Jinchuriki, and the fear that was felt by other villages was now gone. They found themselves in a war with both Kumogakure and Otogakure, with Omegakure in talks with Kumo in joining to crush the leaf. The war between Konoha and the two have been raging on for years now, with the two steadily gaining ground with each passing day. It really was a shock to most of the village when the last, loyal, Uchiha had joined Orochimaru and Sound in the effort to destroy the leaf. The council was livid at this betrayal and had placed Sasuke in the bingo book. Also after Naruto's banishment, Tsunade stepped down as Hokage and left Konoha with Shizune in tow. Kakashi was now placed as 6th Hokage and hasn't had any real authority since. Let's just say that because of the elders in the council, things went from bad to worse for Konoha. Now, Kakashi is now in his office as he looks out to the depressing village that he calls home. Because of the constant threat of invasion, most of the villagers hadn't really been outside lately. The streets were usually barren and a dark cloud hung over the village right now. Kakashi sighed out as he had to figure out a way to boost confidence in the villagers and even the shinobi that stay in the village. He had no idea what to really do now and looked up to the mountainside at the 4th Hokage head. He sighed in disappointment at how much he has shamed himself and failed the village, along with his sensei. A knock on his door brought him out of his thoughts and he regained his composure. "Enter," he said, trying not to have his voice crack. The door opened and in walked a few familiar faces. Asuma along with his team, and Kurenai along with her team entered. Most of the former genin had now become chunin after all those years and had remained a team in this time of war. Only Shikamaru was a junin though. The 8 looked to their Hokage as he had a mission for them all that was of the utmost importance. "As you all know, we are at war with Kumo and Oto." He started as he clasped his hands together and placed them on the desk. "We are at a disadvantage, and with both Orochimaru and Sasuke in Th fray, we're going to need more allies. If AIM joins those two, then without stronger reinforcements, Konoha, our home, will fall." There was a grim tone in the room after hearing this. "Now I'm sending you all to Earth Country to find us more allies. I've even heard rumors of the infamous White Fox being somewhere in Earth. If you can convince him to join us, then AIM will not join Kumo and Oto." There was a bit of a gasp in the room at the mention of the White Fox. Most had read the reports on the war between AIM and Kusa all those years ago and how one man, or by some reports a true demon, had torn apart AIM with the greatest of ease. The shinobi of AIM now made it apparent that if you spot the White Fox, all you should do at that point is pray he makes your death quick. "Hokage-sama," Ino started. "Are you sure that the White Fox would even help us?" Kakashi shook his head in disappointment. "I highly doubt it, but if you all do find him, attempt to convince him as best as you can. I don't care of the method, just get him and others to aid us in this time of war." "Understood. Understood, Hokage-sama." Asuma started. "So when do we leave?" "In 2 hours. Good luck to you all. This mission should take at least 2 weeks at most," Kakashi stated to them. They left his office and prepared for a trip to Earth Country. 2 hours later, outside of Konoha. The group of 8 were making their way to Earth Country now and had broken into conversation. "So, what do y'all think about this whole thing?" Kiba asked his friends as the senseis were up ahead of them. "If you want my honest opinion, Kiba," Shikamaru started, "I think this is going to be a little troublesome." "What makes you say that?" Ino asked her teammate. "For one, we have to head over to Earth Country in the hopes that we can secure an alliance to help in the war, and you all know how Iwa Nin feel towards the leaf. So for the most part, we're mainly tasked with finding this White Fox guy to take AIM out of the equation." Shikamaru continued. "There's also another reason the Hokage sent us all out to Earth, but it's just a theory for now." "And what exactly would that be?" Choji asked his best friend. "There was a rumor that Naruto is somewhere in Earth Country." Shikamaru answered him. This got a mixture of reactions from everyone. Hinata had all but stumbled off of the tree she was moving through at the name of the man she loved. Shino went a little wide-eyed at this information. Choji and Ino gasped and Kiba simply held his head down. After that night of his banishment, most of them went to that festival. They had no idea of what it was about until the fireworks and Naruto's apartment going up in flames. They didn't even know of his banishment until that happened. After the explosion, they found out from one of the Anbu that Naruto did see them at the festival. He probably thought they were also celebrating his banishment and that made most of the group feel horrible. So if Naruto is somewhere in Earth, Shikamaru continued, then we have to bring him back, no matter what. Naruto had been taking a walk with his family to the village for some groceries. Since practically everyone there knew him, they were all greeted by the people of the village. It wasn't a known thing about Kurama being the nine-tailed fox, so she mainly received fairly normal looks from everyone. After what Naruto did for the people of the small village years ago, the entire place got a major overhaul. It wasn't big enough to be considered a large village by any standards, but it was big enough to house every single woman that was involved in what happened years ago. Akira was on top of her father's shoulders reading her newest book on musical instruments while Boruto was running around. He always had so much energy, probably due to the fact that he had so much of Kurama's and Naruto's chakra in his body. Oddly enough, he always had a ton of energy in himself because of this. Kurama was holding onto Naruto's hand as they made their way through the village to gather groceries. As they were doing that, Boruto had run off a lot further from his family. Both Naruto and Kurama weren't all that worried since he knew his way around and everyone knew him, so there was really nothing to worry about. Boruto had decided to run along into the forest once again and have some fun while the rest of his family was back in the village. He was leaping from tree to tree, going higher and higher and higher till he reached the very top. When he was there he stood on a large protruding branch and looked out to the distance. Boruto always wondered what exactly was out there further beyond Earth Country. Akira would tell him of other villages in completely different places from the books she read, but there was a difference between hearing about that from a book and actually seeing it for yourself. As Boruto looked out in the distance though, he was unaware that he was being watched. Two men dressed in dark ninja clothes were on another tree and were passing by when they saw the kid. The two ninja were Kumo nin and looked a little battered and bruised from their near-broken appearance. You see that kid? One of them said to the other. He had a few nasty cuts along his body and for some reason, deep bite marks from some kind of large creature. Yeah. That one grunts out. He several deep cuts on his arms and back, yet somehow he was still able to move around. If there's a kid here, then that means there's a village we can lie low in. Good. Pretty sure we lost those ninjas. Still can't believe they found out we were trying to expand to Earth. The first spoke. I'll grab the kid and get him to show us where the village is. When we heal up, we bring more men to that village to subjugate it as ours. We'll need the outpost. As he was saying this though, I heard a rustling behind them. As quickly as they possibly could, they leapt off of the branch toward the boy just as a large dog and a teen leapt at them. The dog was massive as it had tried and failed to snap its powerful jaws on one of the ninja. Both Kumo ninja tensed up and decided to try and throw kunai at the beast and its master only for a wall of flies to block the attack. That's when they saw the rest of the Konoha nin appear from the other trees. Thinking quickly, the nin that had the deep bite mark threw a smoke bomb to the group. This did nothing as the big dog pounced onto the other man, teeth at his neck. Ha ha. Great job Akamaru. Kiba yelled out, only to realize that the other nin was gone. Where did he? Choji started before Akamaru growled above them. They all looked up to see the man holding a boy that looked surprisingly similar to someone else they were looking for. They all froze when they saw the boy, especially Hinata. His blonde hair, even though it had red tips in the ends, and whisker marks reminded them all of Naruto. The Kumo nin had his arm wrapped around Boruto's neck and held up a kunai to his red eyes. That's when he started to snicker a bit. I'm walking out of here. Don't follow me Konoha scum or the brat dies. None of the Konoha ninja moved a muscle as they didn't want to hit the boy that could possibly know where Naruto is. Or maybe that was Naruto in a henge. But if that were the case, then why isn't he fighting back? Dude, you're in deep trouble when my Tusen shows up. Boruto yelled out, shocking the group even further. They started to think that maybe his father was Naruto, but the Kumo nin didn't care as he was about to stab the boy in the eye. Before anyone could do anything to stop him though, a blur passed through them and held the Kumo nin by the throat. He dropped Boruto and the boy landed on a branch not too far away. The Kumo nin was wheezing heavily as the figure dressed in dark pants, a white shirt and plain sandals held him with a viscous death grip. The group was now in absolute shock as they had found their old friend from so long ago. The blonde hair was still the same, he was taller now, and the girls were blushing at how his ripped muscles were visible as his shirt hugged him tightly. Surprisingly enough, even Kurenai blushed at him. Not surprisingly enough, both Hinata and Ino nearly had nosebleeds looking at him. Boruto. Naruto spoke to his son, getting the boy's attention. Are you okay? Boruto gave him a thumbs up and a big-toothed grin. Naruto mimicked said grin before turning serious and looking to the Kumo nin that was nearly passed out in his clutches. Naruto held him for a few more seconds before dropping him and letting gravity do its work. The Kumo nin fell harshly through branches all the way to the ground floor. Wow Tusen. Boruto started as he and Naruto looked down to where the nin hit. That was awesome. Naruto ruffled up his son's hair before hearing his name being called from behind him. Naruto-kun. Hinata called out softly. Naruto turned and saw the eight standing there, dumbstruck by his mere presence. He hadn't paid them any mind and was simply more concerned for his son than anything else. So it came as a real shocker when Naruto saw them all there in front of him after nearly all these years. Huh. He started hesitantly. Hey guys. After Naruto had dealt with the Kumo nin and made checked on his son, he turned at the sound of his name being called by a familiar voice. To his slight surprise, the voice that his name came from just so happened to be one of his old former classmates from back when he was a kid. As he looked to her and the rest of the Konoha nin he hadn't seen or thought of in years, he took the time to get a good look of them all. The former genin that he once knew had grown quite a bit now, but the general reaction to seeing him was the same for everyone right now. Shock. To Naruto though, he really didn't have much a reaction to them. Instead of saying anything else, Naruto just placed a hand on Boruto's shoulder and both father and son simply vanished. The Konoha group were all stunned by what he had just did and quickly, Asuma ordered everyone to find Naruto. As he gave that order and everyone scattered, thought were going a mile a minute throughout their minds. Who was that child? Has he been here the whole time? What has he been up to all these years? Just how strong and fast has he gotten to be able to move like that? But the most important question was mainly from Hinata as a realization hit her. If that boy is Naruto-kun's father, then who was the whore that has stolen my dream of being with my Naruto-kun away? She started off shocked and stunned, but with that constant thought, the shock slowly turned into rage. Rage towards whoever the whore was that stole Naruto from her and her dream of bearing his children. With Shikamaru, he knew he wasn't fast enough to keep up with Naruto. That speed far exceeded any of them. Maybe if they had Lee and his restraints were taken off and if he opened one of a few of his gates, then he could possibly catch up with Naruto. Shikamaru had already assessed long before they got into Earth Country that most likely if they found Naruto that he would have already moved on. Maybe even started a family and was living peacefully. It seems that his theory was right about a family. If that was true, and if he was living peacefully in a village somewhere, then who were they to take that away from him? Not his friends, that's for certain. Kiba had tried to find Naruto's scent ever since he left the group earlier, but so far nothing. It was almost like his scent was just gone. Kiba and Akamaru stopped at the entrance of a village full of mainly girls, women and some traveling entertainers. The two walked in and were immediately the center of attention. For the village it wasn't every day you see a ninja, and even rarer when you see a massive dog accompanying said ninja. Kiba and Akamaru ignored the looks and instead focused on finding Naruto and that boy they assumed was his cub. Despite their superb tracking skills, they found it very difficult to find said blonde in this village. It was almost like his scent was lingering everywhere and confused the two to no end. Before they could really continue with their so far fruitless search, Asuma and Ino appeared next to the two. You find him yet, Kiba? Ino asked the Inuzuka. Nothing. Kiba answered her. It's almost like he's been everywhere around her too many times for me Akamaru to count. Well, if that's the case. Asuma started as he walked over to a woman working at a stand. Excuse me, but have you seen someone with blonde hair walking around with a child that has nearly the same blonde hair? Asuma wanted to keep his description vague to this civilian. Unfortunately for him and the rest, his vagueness wasn't really too great comparatively speaking. Oh, you mean Naruto and his son Boruto? The woman says to him, surprising the Junin. Actually, yes, I have. They went back to their home just in that direction in the forest. She pointed to the direction of Naruto's house and smiled to the ninja. Thank you. Asuma said as he bowed to her. He and his two students went ahead and ran in the direction Naruto's house was in. They were having a hard time though, as the forest was very thick and it would be almost too easy for anyone to get lost here. Fortunately for them, they leapt into the trees and got a better viewing of the area. Off in the distance, they saw a white house with plants all around and a clearly visible lake not too far away from it. There. Asuma said to the two, urging them to move even faster. Just as they landed in a clearing in front of the house, they saw both Naruto and the child now named Boruto to them heading towards the front door. Naruto! Kiba yelled out to the blonde. Naruto gave a sigh and turned to the three in front of his house. He looked to them with an impassive look that made both Kiba and Ino's hearts sink a bit. He crossed his arms as he looked at them and kept his eyes on the group while Boruto simply stood there, watching. Before anyone else could say anything, the others appeared next to Ino, Kiba and Asuma. They all got a good look at Naruto as he put his hands in his pockets to look at them all. The group, although excited to see their long-lost friend, were a little heartbroken at the impassive glare he was giving them. Hinata took a step forward to speak to her, Naruto-kun, when the front door opened to reveal a slender woman with tan skin and long crimson hair and eyes. She looked to her husband and son before seeing the Konoha ninja in front of them. Kurama had to keep up her facade as a normal woman for obvious reasons and had to look shocked or troubled seeing the ninjas here, but in all honesty she was grinning devilishly in her mind. Which, since both their minds are linked anyway, showed to Naruto, who had to stifle a laugh. Kurama saw the Hyuga standing in front of the group with a truly shocked and horrified look to her face and had to try even harder not to grin at the girl in victory of claiming her mate for herself. Naruto-kun. Kurama started in a sweet and innocently fake tone that didn't really trick anyone. What's going on out here? Naruto sighed again as he answered her. Nothing. Just the past trying to catch up to me, nothing more. Naruto. Asuma started as he stepped past the still stunned Hinata. He took a step onto the porch and immediately regretted it when he felt a massive amount of killer intent hitting him like a ton of bricks. He felt himself ready to fall to his knees if he stayed any closer to the house, so he moved away and the pressure was gone. Asuma stared at the blonde with wide eyes as he started to breathe heavily. I don't know why all of you are doing here when you have a war to fight, or how you found me, but here's some advice. Naruto turned away from them while ushering his family back inside. He turned his head and the glare he gave them sent a bone-chilling shiver through their spines. Leave, and don't come back. Before they could say anything, Naruto shut the door and they felt a very powerful release of killing intent crashing down onto them. Only this one felt different to Asuma. He paled. Naruto's killing intent was just heavy and breathtaking, but this felt like death itself was trying desperately to grasp at you and drag to the fiery depths of the afterlife. The others felt this feeling and for a brief moment, saw something that made them know true fear. When they looked up, the sky was a blood red and there was screams coming from all directions. Blood was everywhere around the group as they could see countless bodies lying at their feet. Kumo Nin, Aim Nin, Odo Nin, Konoha Nin, themselves, lying dead in some of the most gruesome ways imaginable. They all paled and turned to leave, but before they did, the last thing they saw near the house was the Kyuubi no Kitsune itself standing tall over the dead. It looked to them and bared its razor-sharp and bloody teeth in a snarly grin and spoke one word to them all that made more than a few pass out from the sheer force of the voice. Run. And just like that, everything went back to normal. There were no bodies, no blood, the sky was clear once more and Naruto's house was the exact same as before. All 8 ninja, students and senseis alike, felt cold at the sight of the calm and peaceful house and scenery around it. So cold that they all left out of fear for whatever that powerful genjutsu was. A few like Shikamaru and Kurenai had one similar thought. When did Naruto learn such a powerful genjutsu? When they made their way back into the small village area, panting and feeling slightly at ease, they stopped in front of a book stand where a white-haired girl saw where they came from. "Oh, you must all be friends of Naruto-san," she said to the group with a soft smile. They looked to her and saw how calm she was. Was that genjutsu stretched out and nobody here affected, or was it simply placed onto the group? "You know him?" Kiba asked, still a little shaken to the core from the genjutsu. "Of course." She continued on. "Everyone knows Naruto-san. He's the one that saved us all years ago." "Saved you all?" Asuma asked with a questioning look. Setsu dropped her smile for a moment but regained it to tell them the story. "Well, years ago, most of everyone in this village was involved in a human trafficking and prostitution ring run by bandits and a ninja. A few of us, myself included, managed to escape the camp, but we didn't make it too far before we were surrounded. That was Naruto-san showed up and slaughtered the bandits along with freeing the rest of us in this village. He showed no mercy to them and even let myself deal with the leader. I think he said something about him being a sound nin." The group went wide-eyed as Setsu continued. "Anyway, after that Naruto-san decided to stay here after taking off that mask and raise a family." "Mask?" Shino started. "What mask?" Setsu looked a little confused for a moment before seeing the looks on the Konoha nin's faces. She smirked a bit, a very interested gleam to her white eyes, before answering them. "Well, he used to be the White Fox beforehand." To say that the group of Konoha ninja were flabbergasted and shocked was an understatement. How could the number 1 hyperactive, knucklehead ninja in Konoha become the infamous and ruthless White Fox that all of AIM was terrified of? The thought alone was completely ludicrous. Wasn't it? Could Naruto really change that drastically after being banished? As the group pondered this, Setsu had a very dark look adorning her smirk. A look that made the Konoha group question just how much she knew or why she was looking at them like this. Finally, she decided to answer their concerns. "I may not know much about Naruto-san's past, but one thing he told me that I found very interesting is his very strong disdain for the village hidden in the leaves." She pointed to the group's Hitai-ates. "And judging from all of you wearing the same symbol and the fact that you all ran from his home, I take it he didn't enjoy your company." The tone in her voice was one of intentional insult to the Konoha group. They continued to look onto Setsu and then turned back to the path that led to Naruto's house. "So he has a family now?" Choji asked her as he too tried to regain himself to no avail. "Yes," Setsu answered. "I have no idea where his wife came from, but he has 2 children. A son and his younger daughter." Setsu stifled a chuckle before continuing. "You all should head back to your village. I highly doubt that Naruto-san will help you with your war." The group turned to Setsu in shock only to see that she was no longer there. After that, the group had decided that heading back was probably the best idea. They walked away from the path and out of the village, all the while trying to regain some form of composure from the genjutsu and the realization that Naruto Uzumaki was indeed the White Fox. Back at Naruto's home, Naruto had to fight off the urge to punch a hole in the wall. One was because he didn't want his children to see this side of him, and two because Kurama would kill him if he did anything to their home out of anger. He sat down on a couch and tried his hardest not to think about what just happened today. Just as he was closed his eyes, he felt the hand of his wife on his shoulder. He opened his eyes and saw her staring back into his. Worry clearly visible in those crimson eyes. You okay? She asked him in a soft tone. Naruto smiled at her and cupped her face with his hand to bring her closer. He planted a gentle kiss onto her lips and brought her down to sit next to him. Yeah. He whispered to her. I'm okay. As long as I have you guys, I'll never go back there. Really? Akira asked as she sat next her father and looked up at him with pleading eyes. You promised you won't go back there, Otusan. Boruto sat next to his younger sister, nodding his head in determination at her words. It brought a smile to Naruto's face as he hugged his little girl, and in turn she hugged back. You don't have to worry about me, guys. Naruto said to them. I plan on staying here for a long time. Konoha. A few days later. The 8 Konoha ninja had finally made it back to Konoha. It took a full 2 days for the shock and after effect of the genjutsu to wear off, but they were finally back home. They quickly made their way back to the Hokage's office to inform him of what they had discovered in Earth Country only to see Sakura and Team Guy as well. Kakashi was slightly relieved to see them return and was in heavy anticipation of what news they had. I take it you all have news for me. Kakashi asked them in a jovial tone, hiding his tiredness and frustration at the council. Asuma stepped forward. Hokage-sama, we found Naruto. The mere news surprised the Hokage, Team Guy and especially Sakura. When Naruto's banishment was announced, she broke down. She had lost both of her teammates in the span of 1 week and was now a part of a newly formed Team 7 with a new sensei and everything. It wasn't the same in Konoha for her without Naruto. She perked up at his name but then saw the hurt faces of her fellow ninja and her heart sank a bit. Where is he then? Is he outside waiting or? She was cut off by Kurenai. He's still in Earth Country in a small village. He has a family and is living peacefully with no intention of coming back. Kurenai had to turn her head away from the broken look on Sakura's face hearing this news. He's also the White Fox. Shikamaru said to the still stunned Kakashi. This got the intended reaction as everyone in the room not on Team Asuma or Kurenai looked to the Nara clan member. Someone in the village told us everything about how he saved the villagers from bandits and a sound ninja years ago as the White Fox. Now he lives there with his wife and children. Naruto-kun is married. Lee asked them in surprise. Shikamaru nodded to Lee and that was when Kakashi sighed out loud. Everyone else, minus Sakura who was still processing all of this, turned to their leader. The council is not gonna be happy about this. Council meeting room. And sure enough they weren't. How could that demon brat deny helping us? He should be grateful for all we've done for him. There's no way that monster is a hero to anyone. If anything, he should be begging us all to come back here. Damn that demon to exactly where he belongs. In hell. Enough. Kakashi shouted out to the civilian council. He had had enough of their bickering and would not stand for them calling out his former student turned war hero. You all claim all of this when it was all of you that had him banished in the first place. This is your penance for your arrogance and selfishness, and the village will suffer because of all of you. Kakashi's words had the effect on the shinobi side of the council, but not so much on the civilians. Unfortunately for them all, a certain bandaged-up elder had other thoughts. After the meeting, Danzo sat in his chambers, seething in rage at how his plans were in shambles now. He needed Naruto to be banished so he could coerce the boy in joining his side, but those plans changed when his root Anbu couldn't find him anywhere. It was almost as if he dropped off the face of the planet. Now that it was revealed to him that the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the most powerful tailed beast and demon in history, but he was also the very brutal and infamous White Fox. This just went from bad to worse for the man as he had to come up with some plan to use the boy-turned-teen into his weapon for Konoha. That was when a sadistic plan came to his mind. Sigh. He spoke and the pale teen root Anbu appeared in a kneeling pose. Hi, Danzo-sama. Sai responded with no emotion. I'm going to need you and a few more of my route to head to Earth Country. Danzo noticed Sai raise his head in a questioning way. I'll need that Jinchuriki for my plans to come to fruition. And if he won't come willingly, he stood and gave a sinister grin, then we'll have to see how much he truly loves those precious children of his. Unbeknownst to Danzo though, there was a small snake just outside his room, and it slithered away to relay a very interesting message to its master. Orochimaru. Deep within the tunnels underneath sound, a snake slithers as quickly as it can back to its master. As the snake slithered, it passed a certain room and froze out of fear. It turned its head and saw a dark figure walking slowly towards it. Before the figure could get any closer, a new voice made its presence known. Ah, my spy has returned earlier than expected. The voice caught both the snake and the figure's attention. They turned to see the snake Sanin slowly walking towards them with that ever-present grin plastered on his face. And what exactly was so important that you directly disobeyed my orders to return within a month's time? It has only been a week. Despite his calm demeanor, Orochimaru was actually not pleased with this. The snake answered quickly with a few hisses and the figure noticed that Orochimaru was getting one of his very interested glares. The figure kept listening and continued to watch as the Sanin began to chuckle under his breath for a few seconds before going on a full-on cackle. So, what did it say? The figure asked, slightly irritated. Orochimaru stopped his cackle for a few moments to address him with a sinister smile. Why, he was just telling me of your old teammate having been found. Sasuke. Sasuke stepped out of the shadows and gave a slight furrow of his brow. The mere mention of that dope's name made his blood boil. It wasn't enough that that move Naruto used all those years ago at the Valley of the End nearly trumped his Chidori, but the fact that he nearly beat Sasuke with said move. Sasuke snickered when he had heard of his old rival's banishment and assumed that he would simply crawl under a bridge and die a slow and painful life with no one. At the time though, after Naruto's banishment, the blonde simply vanished from the ninja world. This is the first bit of information on the blonde since that day. Sasuke started with an arrogant smirk. So, why exactly did this make you laugh like a lunatic? The last Uchiha crossed his arms and leaned onto the door frame. Orochimaru kept his smirk even with the pseudo-insult and answered him. It seems that Danzo has forgotten his place, and knows the whereabouts of the Uzumaki. He's sending his root Anbu to get the boy's attention, and the only way to do that, is to apparently snag his children. At that point, Sasuke's eyes went wide before he clenched his teeth in anger. How? How could that dobe have children? How could he find some form of happiness after his banishment? The very thought of it all made Sasuke's Sharingan flare up with rage. And what exactly do you plan on doing about this? Sasuke said through gritted teeth. Orochimaru's grin grew as he said his next words. Well, it would be very useful to my own plans if the boy were to be dealt with. And I think those little children of his would make excellent leverage as well. Sasuke gained a bit of a devious and evil grin as he easily put together what the Sannin was asking him to do. A few days later, Naruto was walking with Akira to a clearing not too far away from his home. She had been pestering him about how her eyes keep changing to red ever since those Konoha nin came by. Instead of asking her mother to explain it all, she kept pestering her father to spend even more time with him. In the back of his mind, Naruto figured out why his daughter was staying close to him so much. In her mind, she wanted her father to stay with her and her brother and mother forever like he promised. Naruto didn't mind though. He thought seeing her act like this was absolutely cute in a way. They made their way to a clearing and Naruto sat down next to a tree and motioned for Akira to sit next to him. She did a little pout before sitting on his lap with her arms crossed. She was still pouting as they both sat under the tree to watch the gentle breeze brush through the grass. Naruto had a smile on his face as he watched, but the smile went away slightly as he saw the look on his daughter's face. She was looking down with a slightly worried look to her face. Naruto saw that and could feel that she was getting teary-eyed. With a sigh, Naruto spoke to her in a gentle tone while stroking her beautiful hair. This wasn't about asking me about you eyes, was it, Akira? Akira stayed quiet as she curled herself closer to her father. Naruto could tell that she was feeling some kind of sorrow ever since that day. Akira. Naruto started as he held her soothingly. Do you see that out there? Akira, at first, didn't look up to see whatever it was her father wanted her to see. After a few seconds and sniffling a bit, she looked up to her father's smiling face and she gave a tiny smile. Naruto pointed out to the open field and Akira looked out only to go wide-eyed at the sight. In front of her was an amazingly beautiful sight of the land. Peaceful valley of lush greens that stretched as far as the eye could see towards the forest. A spectacle that made Akira nearly forget just what she was on the verge of tears for. She looked out to the still gentle wind moving the grass and the leaves falling to the earth around them. It was a truly magnificent sight to behold. Akira. Naruto started to her as he held her in his arms. She looked up to see a calm grin on her father's face as he continued. Have you ever wondered why me and your Ka-san came here? Akira shook her head. No. It was because we looked to this place and saw something that we had both been craving for a long time. Naruto answered as he looked out to the valley with a smile. What exactly, To-san? Akira asked him. A chance to start over. Naruto answered as he continued to look out. A chance to live without having to worry about our past or wallow in our failures. A chance to do something that we both wanted for so long. A family. He said that last part as he looked down to Akira, who started to have tears in her eyes. Naruto cupped her face with both hands and wiped away her tears as he continued. You and Boruto are my world. Your Ka-san is the woman I love with all my heart. And I will never let anything stand between me and you three. I love all of you, I love this place, I love our home, and I wouldn't trade any of it for the world, Akira. Okay. Akira got misty-eyed but nodded to her father slowly before throwing herself on him. She hugged her father tightly while sobbing into his chest. Naruto simply hugged her back and stroked her hair while cooing into her ears. They stayed like this for a few minutes until Akira suddenly stopped crying at this point and raised her head up to meet his eyes. Naruto was taken aback a little when he could see the resolve and determination in those bright blue eyes. Sure, they had tears in the sides of them that just made her look too cute, but determined nonetheless. Then can I get just as strong as you two-san? She asked him, surprising the blonde father for a moment before he smiled at her. Of course you can, Akira. He said to her as he rubbed her head playfully, earning a big tooth smile from her. Me and your mom will even train you if you want. There are some things that we have to teach you any. Before Naruto could finish his sentence, Naruto grabbed Akira and dodged a few shuriken that came from the forest shadows. The shuriken kept coming and Naruto kept dodging with ease despite Akira squirming from fear. Akira. Naruto started in a stern tone that caught his daughter's attention. It's okay. I've got you. The mere smirk on her father's face was enough to reassure her as he landed and dodged another wave of shuriken. He continued to dodge until one almost came at his daughter. That was the wrong move. Naruto caught the shuriken mere inches from a strand of Akira's hair and threw it at its attacker almost too fast for said attacker to dodge. The attacker fell to the ground from a tree and Naruto saw that it was an anbu from Konoha. More precisely, a root anbu. The shuriken had went cleanly through the anbu's mask and through his skull cleanly. Before Naruto could say anything else, there were at least 20 or so root anbu surrounding him. They all bore white masks of different animals but all wore the same black cloaks. Naruto Uzumaki. One of the root, a man in a falcon mask, spoke as he stepped forward. Our mission is to ensure your cooperation to Konoha for the war between us and our enemies. Will you submit and come with us peacefully? Naruto set Akira down as he looked around for an opening. Akira was clinging to his pants leg out of fear for these men. She had never seen ninja before aside from the Konoha group that came by and a few passerby nin that were very friendly to the village. This was different though. Even with her father here to reassure her, it was still scary for her to be surrounded by all these masked ninja. I already gave the last bunch of Konoha ninja my answer. Naruto said to the falcon-masked Root. My answer remains the same even if you attempt to attack me. Now leave, or I'll ensure none of you do. The Root Anbu got into a readied stance and prepared to attack. Unbeknownst to Naruto, their true objective is to distract him while Sai and a few others attempt to capture one of his other child. With Sai could tell that his comrades were about to deal with Naruto directly. When Sai was assigned this task, he knew that Naruto being the infamous White Fox would prove an interesting match, but once Danzo told him to simply retrieve one of the children as leverage, well, that idea to face off against Naruto went away. Sai and a few others arrived at the house that was reported by Asuma a few days ago. One of the Root not wearing a mask used a wood-style jutsu to break the door's hinges quietly as to not draw in any attention. Once the door was open, they went inside in search of a child. They weren't concerned for the wife and had no orders in dealing with her whatsoever. So if and when they run into her, they'll most likely have to subdue or injure her to get Naruto's attention. Hey! A young voice came from the group of four's right. They turned to see a young boy in a pair of orange shorts and a white shirt standing there looking at them with a bit of anger to his face. Who the heck are you guys, and what are you doing in our house? Boruto yelled out to them. Target acquired. Sai said as he disappeared behind the boy to deliver a chop to his neck. Only when he reached, a hand grabbed his wrist and squeezed tightly, causing a loud snap sound. Sai gasped in pain but held off on other emotions as he gritted his teeth. I don't know who you are, nor do I care. A feminine voice came out, only it sent chills down the Root's spines. But you signed your own death warrants when you decided to even lay your eyes on my son. She was dressed in a long black dress with red trims on the ends and sleeves. Kurama's eyes burned with anger as she flung the pale Root right at his comrades with incredible force. Sai crashed into the three and they were sent flying out of the house. All right, Ka-san. Boruto excitedly yelled out as he raised his fist in the air. Kurama simply grinned and shook her head to her son's antics. Stay inside, Boruto. I'm gonna take care of these Konoha fools. Boruto nodded to shook his head excitedly as he would see the rare occurrences of seeing his mother in action. He would catch glimpses of her and his father sparring but never seriously enough to really be called a serious fight. So this would be very cool to watch for the young blonde. Kurama stepped out and smirked at the four as they stood up to take defensive positions. Sai, despite only having the use of one arm, pulled out a scroll and a brush. He started to write in the scroll with his teeth and a few animals made of ink came rushing towards Kurama. She didn't even flinch as all she did was flare a very small portion of her ki to cause the ink to melt from the heat. The four were beyond surprised to see this, but before they could say or do any more, Kurama was already next to them in a burst of speed they couldn't even see. She delivered a powerful kick to Sai's already broken hand and shattered the rest of his arm, sending him flying away from them. The man without a mask went wide-eyed and leapt back as he saw the woman reach for a short sword just under her dress. The man without a mask watched through his brown hair as his two other comrades were beheaded with such veracity. Damn, he said as he went through a few hand seals and was about to say his jutsu, but that was until the woman turned to him with those burning red eyes. He froze as he started to see his death play out in front of him in brutal and inhumane ways. He froze as he continued to be ensnared in this genjutsu that was far too advanced to be done by any ordinary person. Who was this woman? Just who in the hell did Naruto Uzumaki marry? Before he could think any more, Kurama walked over to him slowly. She knew she could have ended this battle in many different ways, but she also knew that if she revealed too much, then that would possibly endanger her family. Instead of just killing these Konoha scumbags with one of her own techniques, she just went for kenjutsu instead of her flashy ways of fighting her husband. Kurama approached the man as he was shaking rather violently at this point. She stopped right in front of him and smirked down at his pathetic state before drawing her sword arm back to deliver the killing blow. That was when she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time that stopped her in her tracks. She turned around to her home only to go wide-eyed as she saw a long snake wrapped around her son's entire body. The snake looked right at her and hissed before disappearing with an unconscious Boruto in tow. Boruto. Kurama shouted out loudly as she flared her ki to titanic proportions. With Naruto. Naruto was just finishing off the rest of the root Anbu at this point. Along with protecting his daughter and having no weapon at first, it was a little bit difficult. He couldn't use any of his major jutsus aside from Kage Bushin in fear that he might unintentionally hurt Akira in the process. It took him a little bit of time, but he was able to deal with them quickly. Just as he finished the last of the route, he and his daughter heard the loudest shout that sent shockwaves through the valley they were in. The ki made all the clones poof away and caused Akira to nearly pass out. Naruto held onto her and released his own ki to keep her safe. If Kurama was doing this, then something must have happened to Boruto. Without wasting any time, Naruto picked up Akira and raced over to the house only to see that she had a pale root member by the throat and shouting at him in anger. "Where did you take my son?" She kept shouting, unknowingly killing the guy with her very presence. "Where is he?" Naruto had seen her this angry before, so it wasn't anything too new, but Akira on the other hand was terrified now. She had never seen her mother like this before. The very sight of her anger as tails started to come out of her lower back made the little girl cower behind her father. Naruto noticed this and quickly went to his angered wife to calm her down. "Where is he?" "Kurama." Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, causing her to turn around with the rage still boiling in her eyes. "That's enough. Not until I know where these worthless sacks of flesh took our boy." She shouted out to him, her tail swirling out of rage. "And do you really want to show this side of you to your daughter?" Naruto said to her softly as he moved for his wife to see Akira shaking out of fear. Kurama went wide-eyed as she saw that fear in Akira's eyes. All directed towards her. She dropped the near-lifeless body and reined in her anger. Her tails retracted in her body, and her ki faded away. The rage in her own eyes replaced with grief and sadness herself. She wanted to say something to her own flesh and chakra, but no words would form as she broke down. Naruto held onto her as he knew this was a side of her that she never wanted any of her children to see, ever. Akira slowly made her way over to her parents and was about to say something, but that was when another presence made itself known and knocked her out with a chop to the back of her head. Naruto and Kurama quickly turned around and saw, to their shock and rising anger, Sasuke Uchiha standing there with their daughter in tow. He smirked at them before summoning his Sharingan eyes. Before the two could look away, they were now trapped in a genjutsu meant for the Kyuubi itself. A special genjutsu Sasuke had made specifically to incapacitate the beast within Naruto. As the woman fell to ground seizing up slightly, Naruto was struggling to stand to his feet. No matter what, he was going to save his children no matter the cost to himself. SS Sasuke. Naruto shouted out as he tried again to stand. "What are you doing here?" he struggled to say. Sasuke smirked to his former rival as he held Akira up. "If you want your children to stay safe, then why don't you come and get them?" He lowered Akira and turned to walk away. Before he did, he looked back at Naruto with the same smirk. "Oh, and if you really want to know where I am with these two brats of yours, ask their leader." He pointed to the man still trapped in the genjutsu and the pale root member gasping for air before disappearing in a shunshin. Naruto went wide-eyed as he finally was able to break the genjutsu. Just as he did, he went over to Kurama, who was still seizing from the powerful Sharingan genjutsu, and released her from it. She stopped seizing and was unconscious now. Despite her status as the most powerful demon in the world, in her human form genjutsus that are powerful enough to confuse her fox form can incapacitate her in her human form. Naruto let her rest as he heard the root with no mask groan from the released genjutsu on himself. Naruto narrowed his eyes in anger as he turned around to see the man attempt to stand. Naruto walked over towards the man as he stood to his feet on shaky legs. As he looked up to the rather pissed off blonde, He attempted to use his wood-style jutsu, but was still under the after effects of Kurama's genjutsu. Naruto wasted no time grabbing the man by the throat and lifting him off the ground. The man tried again to summon a jutsu, but this time, a Naruto clone cut both the man's hands with a Kyakuma. The man shrieked in pain as he started to bleed out. The clone handed Naruto his blade before it poofed away. Naruto held the man in a tightening grip as he stared a piercing glare into his eyes, a glare that could make even the mightiest of men tremble in fear. "Who the fuck sent you?" Naruto said in a tone that promised death itself if he didn't get an answer. The man, since he could no longer defend himself with jutsus, answered with a pained tone. "Danzo-sama sent us to ensure your loyalty in the war." Naruto's eyes glowed with even more rage. He remembered Danzo when he was a child and how much the man would talk to his own Anbu about plans for him. A little after his banishment, Naruto figured out that Danzo wanted to use him as some kind of a weapon of sorts for Konoha. Thanks to Kurama, he managed to escape those root Anbu back then. If Danzo knew where Orochimaru was, then that meant that it was time for Naruto to get answers himself. "If he wanted my attention," Naruto started as he lowered his head, "then he's got it." Naruto looked up. "I'm going to get what I need from Danzo. Then I'm going to find Orochimaru and Sasuke. And after I'm done skinning the very flesh from their bones and letting maggots feast on their carcasses as they're buried alive, I'm gonna burn Konoha to the ground." Before the man could attempt to protest, Naruto flicked his wrist and snapped his neck in two with ease. He dropped the man and continued to seethe in anger until he heard muffled groans behind him. He turned to see Kurama slowly stir herself awake while also seeing off in the distance that last root Anbu groaning as well. Naruto went to his wife and lifted her up slowly. "Naruto," Kurama slowly said, her eyes showing her pain. "Kurama." Naruto started in a soft tone before looking at her sternly. The look in his eyes held intense resolve as he said his next words to her. "We're going to Konoha.